Hey team, hope you're well. We're going to talk about now the medication sort of issues of two specific populations. One is children, one's the elderly. There's a lot going on in the research and also just culturally about this. You need to be aware of it, especially if you're working with those populations. There is, and you've probably read this in the news in just the past few years, there's a real significant rise in the prescribing of psychotropics to children, and also there are views, there's a lot of controversy over that of medicating children. Children and adolescents, here's the issues. Children and adolescents have a developing brain. They're not an adult where the brain is kind of what it is. And so there's a lot of concern of what is the effect on the developing brain of somebody who is changing rapidly when you put strong substances into it. And so there's a lot of scrutiny on that. The other part is the use of the medication is now ahead of the research. In other words, for lots of reasons, conduct problems that are severe, or schools that don't know what to do, or parents that don't know what to do, they're medicating at a higher level than a lot of researchers are comfortable with. They're saying we don't know enough yet to do this, and you're playing with fire here. So you've got the usage level at a really high level, and the research isn't at the same place. You've got those two issues between the developing brain and the usage issue. But think about it. I mean, when Ritalin first came out with ADD, a couple of decades ago, and ADD and ADHD were seen as something that children had and that Ritalin helped. A lot of times what you saw was that Ritalin and Adderall were overused and underused both. I mean, they were underused because a lot of parents were just kind of in denial that the child actually had ADD, and their stance was, well, they just got to be more organized. They got to be more organized. Well, if your brain's not working well, you can be as organized as you can be, and not good things are going to happen. One of our kids had ADD and got it diagnosed early enough in life, and it changed his whole life when he got the right dosage with the right doctor, and everything changed. Grades went up, his frustration with himself went down, so it's really true. But then there's an over-medication aspect too, where the child doesn't really have ADD, the child just needs structure. It just needs a plan and a house that's not chaotic, and rules in the house and ground rules about conduct and getting homework done and going to sports and church and waking up at a certain time and going to bed. Ever heard of Boundaries with Kids? That's why we wrote that book. Henry Clouden wrote that book, because of the need for parents to have structure for the children. And a lot of times a parent was either resistant to adding that structure. It was too much work to set boundaries and keep boundaries, or they didn't want to disappoint the child, or they were just afraid of the consequences and making the child angry at them. So what do? They medicate them. It was easier to do. It's awful, and we saw a lot of that. And sometimes the schools came in that, sometimes the doctor did, sometimes the parents did. So this is a reality that is over and under prescribed. And also, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, has reported that an extensive analysis of clinical trials showed that antidepressants may cause or worsen suicidal thinking or behavior in a small number of children and teens. Now, I've moved from antidepressants now, I've moved from ADD medication now to antidepressants. And it showed that they had when they tested with the placebo test, sugar pill, and with children and adolescents with an antidepressant, versus the sugar pill, there was a small increase in suicidal thinking. Now that gets your attention. You want to make sure you've taken care of that. None of the children in these studies actually took their own life, but the FDA did consider that and said, and they put out a public advisor to say, to the public and to also the pharmacologists or the pharmacological organizations to put this as a warning. So it hasn't happened, but it's important. Now, let's shift over from concerns with the population of children and adolescents to concerns about the elderly, the older generation. There's a lot of documentation that older adults are highly vulnerable to the adverse effects of psychotropics. Older people, their bodies are more frail and more fragile, and so the side effects will hit them at a stronger level. You've really got to know what you're doing. That's with older adults. That's why I always look for a psychiatrist who's got some special training in geriatric psychiatry, gerontology, because their bodies don't handle it the same way, and it can have very, very serious consequences because of the fragility of their body, and they're sick a lot and this sort of thing. Also, there's just the simple, and it just is so sad. I just feel sad saying this. there's the warehousing of America and of the world problem of the gray hair, that a lot of times people just find places for them that are really low quality, where they're lonely, they're not taken care of, they're not talked to, they don't get relational ingredients from anything. And in some of these places, it's just really heinous. They're sort of just sedated so they don't cause trouble, and they're not bothering people, and they have an awful, awful, awful sad life. And I hope those guys that own these places all go to jail, because it's awful. Because the medications that sedates just put them into a stupor, and there's not a life for them. So these are the controversies going on culturally and medicationally, and it's good to be aware of these, because especially, like I said, if you treat the adults, the older adults, or if you treat children, you're going to come across these, and it's good to be at least aware of these issues, and also to have an opinion on them and have some suggestions. People are desperate. They're desperate to help their children or their teens. They're desperate to do something with the older adults in their life. And it's good for you to have the information. All right? Hope it's a good course.